Coming to the detailed analysis of the poem, the first stanza reads, "Dockery was junior to you, wasn't he?" said the Dean. Now, the Dean's words are in quotes, and speaker tells us that Dean asked me that Dockery was junior to you, wasn't he? Now, Dean is insinuating here something. Dockery has a son and you do not have a son. And he has a son and you don't have a son, but he was a junior to you. So here, this Dean seems to be representing the convention, the tradition. In your society, you will find if there's a guy who is elder to someone and the younger one has already got married, has children, and the people would come across and ask him, hey, he has got a son, he is married, and you are elder to him and you have nothing. So this is how the poem begins, hinting at, there's a person who represents the tradition, the conventions, who upholds this idea of marriage and idea of having a son. And most probably, the elder one must get a son before the younger one gets, is more dominant in idea here. But Philip Larkin, who is a post-modernist, for that matter, a movement poet, an anti-modernist, who does not, buy such kind of arguments, ignores this question of Dean and does not reply to him in any words. Rather, how does Philip Larkin react, our speaker react to him? His son's here now. That's important. As I said earlier, now Dean says his son's here now. He has a son and he is here now, and you have nothing. You didn't get married. You have no sons, and your sons, you are coming here single. That's shameful. The Dean is hinting at those traditions. But Philip Larkin is ignoring all these conventions, all these traditions. He is pessimistic as he was towards most of the traditions from modernism. And he responds to these queries of the Dean in a very pessimistic, negative and ignoring manner. He writes, "Death-suited, visitant, I nod." Death-suited, visitant. Now you must be confused. What is this now? Is this a kind of answer that the speaker is giving? No, this is not the answer. As I said earlier, he is not interested in buying this argument of Dean. So instead of answering who Dockery was he his junior, and any explanation to the question that he has a son and you do not have, Philip Larkin comes up with nothing. Rather, he introduces Dean to you and me. Who is this Dean? He is death-suited. He seems to be wearing the clothes which people usually wear during funeral, during the death of some person. Now, why is it so? Why is he wearing these these clothes which are usually worn when someone dies? The reason would be Philip Larkin's psychology states that this guy, Dean, is representing the ideas, the ideologies which have passed away, which have died. The modernist traditions, the family, the marriage, the son, the elder one getting married before the younger one, and having the son and not having son being shameful. All these conventions, all these traditions, according to Philip Larkin, have died long ago. And this guy, Dean, who is sitting here in front of me and asking me these questions, seems to be here, attending the death of someone. But he is actually representing the dying tradition, the tradition which is about to die. Now here we have these, what Larkin is doing, he is juxtaposing these two different traditions of modernism and postmodernism. And he says, I nod. I didn't say anything to him. I nodded. Yes, he was a junior to me. He was here. He has a son and I don't have. Hardly matters. It needs no explanation. And do you keep in touch with? Now there is another question from the Dean, and then there is a dash. This dash is again the attitude of Philip Larkin towards the modern tradition? Do you keep in touch with him? And in the postmodern era, we do not keep in touch with people. Those people who lived during modern age, or if even you can make up about the people who lived 2-3 generations earlier, they would tell you, they knew all their relatives, they knew their friends, they kept in touch with their friends, but those traditions are no more now. We do not keep in touch with people around us. Particularly, there would be many of us who do not know their relatives, who have not been to their relatives for years together. We may keep friends on Facebook, 500,000, 5,000 friends on WhatsApp, but we will never, talk to them, converse with them. They are just their virtual friends. It's good to see that list of 5,000 people, but in our lives, in reality, there is nothing. Now, that is another tradition which Dean is hinting at. Do you keep in touch with him? And look, this dash represents the pessimism of Philip Larkin. He is not interested even in listening what Dean has to say. And he does not answer this question. Rather, he goes into a deep thought process. He thinks about something else. What does he think? Remember how black-gowned, unbreakfasted, and still half-tight we used to stand before that desk. Philip Larkin is in another word. Death-suited or black-gowned. He is still thinking about this Dean. Today, he is wearing the dress which people wear during death. And when Philip Larkin was a student of this institute, this college, this Dean used to be here, and then he used to wear black gown. And we as a students would come in the morning and explain ourselves why we were late, or we, if ever committed any naughty thing, then we have to attend in front of this desk giving explanations. Now, why is this great gap here? What Philip Larkin is thinking and what Dean is asking is again the gap between two different eras, modernism and postmodernism. And this Dean is saying something and Larkin is thinking about something else. Dean is asking him, do you keep in touch with Dockery? And Philip Larkin is thinking about his college days when he had to give explanation to this Dean. Back then he used to wear black gown, unbreakfasted, without having anything, and running in the college and having committed a certain mistake and explaining to this Dean. He's thinking about those days and thinking how those days passed away. To give our versions of these incidents last night, I tried the door of where I used to live. Now look again. The question, do you keep in touch with him, is gone. No answer, no reply. And suddenly the speaker is hinting at something else. What is that something else? He is looking the chamber where he used to be, where he used to live during his college days. Looking out for the door. That was the last verse of the first stanza, and that is how this poem begins. We have got an idea that this poem is also about the convention versus no convention, the tradition versus no tradition, modernism versus postmodernism. Dean represents conventions, traditions, modernism, and the speaker represents no convention, no modernism, but postmodernism. Now we'll come to the second stanza. Locked. The lawn spreads dazzlingly wide. What is locked? One word, full stop. In the previous stanza, he said, I was looking for the door, for the chamber where I used to live, but it's locked. And the lawn is dazzlingly wide. Seems a pattern now, but the door is locked. And he ignores this also, this locked door. He doesn't try to open it or ask someone, please, help me opening this lock. I just want to have a look at my chamber. Not interested. The speaker is not interested. A known bell chimes. I catch my train. Ignore. A known bell chimes. A bell rings. And maybe this is the bell or the warning bell of the train, it has arrived, and now the Larkin has to leave, that is the speaker has to leave. So he leaves, ignored everything that was there, the dean, the chamber, the college, and he leaves in the train. Now as he boards the train, canal and clouds and colleges subside slowly from view. Everything that was around, the landscape that he is hinting at. Now he is traveling through a train, so suddenly he would tell you about things, but he does not detail them. He does not detail the canal, he does not detail the clouds, he does not detail the colleges, but he says that I was in the train and they subside from the view. Now this subsiding from the view has much deeper a meaning than perhaps you get. They subside from the view of the speaker at present, since he has boarded a train and leaving, so obviously the college will be left behind. But the college has been left behind way early. You know when? He was a student in this college, and he left this college some perhaps 20 years, 15 years ago. And now, that view has faded away. Everything related to this locality is almost gone. And, there is no, relationship with this institute. Only memories are there, but they have also faded. And that is another important aspect of this poem, which I had hinted in when I was dealing with the context of this poem, that life is such a journey where when you leave a particular place, even if you have spent a decade there, 5 years, 20 years, but when you leave that place and move to another place, you will never have got, that what we call apnapan with that particular place after you return to that, say for example, a year, 2 years later, 3 years later, there will not be that emotional touch or, that touch with that particular place, perhaps which you experienced when you were there. So all these things have faded away now from his view. Look how indifferent he was to his own chamber, how indifferent he was to the dean, how indifferent he was to the lock. He didn't bother to open that lock to take a look, and he ignored everything, boarded the train and left. That is life. As it passes, it does not look back, and it does not have time to look back. But Dockery, good Lord, anyone up today must have been born in 43 when I was 21. And now he starts thinking about Dockery. You understand? The dean asked him earlier about Dockery. There he was not interested about Dockery. Now he has boarded the train. He has nothing to do, and suddenly he thinks about Dockery. And he thinks, when was Dockery born? He realizes he must have been born in 1943. When Philip Larkin says, our speaker says he was 21. But he does not recall this Dockery in the best sense. He doesn't know who this Dockery is. Or he has forgotten this Dockery. That is why he is thinking about him now. If he was younger, did he get his son at 19, 20? Dean said he was younger to me, was he? Perhaps he was. But if he was younger to me, then he must have had his son at 19 or 20, which means he must have got married at 18. Strange tradition. He got married at such an early age. So now he is calculating what must have had happened with Dockery, that he had a son who is in college now. He is now interested in this Dockery. Was he that withdrawn, high-collared public school boy sharing rooms with Cartwright who was killed? As I said earlier, he does not know about this Dockery, so he is guessing who was this Dockery. Was he that high-collared man? High-collared man, here is a reference maybe to a guy who belonged to the upper class, high-collared. So he is hinting in upper class, then he says that upper class people are less rebellious in nature. They tend to be, related to the tradition and customs. Some of them do go against them, but most of them pretend to be following the traditions. Was he who lived with Cartwright? So he is guessing, he is trying to recall the guy Dockery. So the focus here in this second stanza is on Dockery. Now since second stanza ended with a run-on line, so I continued into the third stanza. So we are right now in the third stanza of this poem. Well, it just shows how much, how little, yarning. I suppose I fell asleep. Now another thing, very important thing, he is again ignoring, how irresponsive he is to these things. He is trying to recall Dockery, but he thinks recalling Dockery is a boring thing. So what happens? He thinks how little, how much, how little, and then he falls asleep. Forgets about Dockery. And we still don't know who was Dockery. When did he get married? When he had son. The speaker was about to throw light on him, but the subject is so dull, so boring that he fell asleep. And after sleeping for a while, waking at the fumes at furnace glares of Sheffield, and suddenly, this train had to change its route at Sheffield, which is maybe the name of a station, and because it created a lot of noise there as the train was changing the track, so I woke up. What I did after waking up, I did not think about Dockery. Rather, what I did, where I changed and ate an awful pie and walked along the platform to its end to see the ranged, joining and parting lines reflect a strong, unhindered mood. Where I did, there I changed, ate something, walked around, looked at the geography, the location, again the landscape of the place, and then I took a look at the unhindered mood. Now this unhindered mood are the first two words of the fourth stanza. Now from this point onwards, what Philip Larkin would be talking about the nature. And this unhindered mood would be a reflection that everything has changed in his life. And most of the things have changed. But look at this mood. It is unhindered. It is consistent. It has not changed. Nothing has changed with mood. It's as bright as used to be when I was in college, when I was a student. And now I am old. Life has gone through so much. Many things have changed, but the mood is as it is. And that is another aspect of this poem. The inconsistency of human life versus the consistency of nature, our natural objects, would be another juxtaposition of this life. That was the third stanza of the poem. So far we are done with three stanzas of the poem, and in three stanzas of the poem, what we have so far known about this poem is an initial conversation between the speaker and the dean, which led to no conclusion, but rather a digression took place there where speaker took us to his college days, and then he left the college and boarded a train, and when he boarded a train, in train he started thinking about Dockery, who Dockery was, because he cannot recall the Dockery, but then the subject seemed so much boring that he fell asleep, and as he woke up, he changed the subject from Dockery to nature.